Welcome to Homeschool Tacklecast, the podcast from the authors of the Homeschool Tackle Box Handbook and Workbooks.
We're here to help you discover your children's unique needs as learners. We'll help you apply this knowledge and stimulate your children's motivation, creativity, curiosity, and learning excellence.
We are Sue Notestein and
Nancy Piercy.
We are veteran teachers with over 6 decades of teaching experience, and we come to you from teacherstacklebox.com/homeschool.
Loading your tackle box with the right tools will ensure homeschool is a rewarding and happy experience for both you and your amazing children. Places, everyone. Take 1. 3, 2, 1, action.
Hello, and welcome.
Hold it, Sue. We need to redo that. You were coughing, clearing out your sinuses before you began.
Yeah, I know.
And then you need to get a little more enthusiastic. You said, hello, like you could care less. You need to show some enthusiasm like, hello, welcome. You sounded really tired and bored.
And you think that your dramatic overkill was better? Sometimes that joyful exuberance of yours makes me want to gag. If you think you're an actress or something, well, you need to rethink that.
No, of course not. But I do know that if you sound bored, the audience is going to be bored. You have to show some enthusiasm. Show that you're excited about what you're talking about.
You know what? I don't have to do anything, sister. You're not my boss.
No, of course not. We're partners. Just take a deep breath and try again.
You take a deep breath and try again. I'm tired of your know-it-all attitude, telling me what to do all the time. Just what makes you an expert?
Nothing. I'm not an expert.
That's right. You are not an expert. I'm out of here.
Oh, please don't go. I'll tell you what. Let's just take a break and cool off. I'll meet you back here in 30 minutes, okay?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Cut. Take 2.
Hello, welcome.
Oh, that's much better, Sue.
We know we'll never win an Academy Award, but we just wanted to remind you how quickly communication between friends and loved ones can deteriorate. It happens to everybody, you guys included, but what do we do about it when it happens? Sometimes we walk away, sometimes we get angry, we argue, we apologize, but how often do we actually stop and take the time to figure out what's wrong and try to fix it? As you know, when you don't resolve that conflict, the same contentious topic comes up over and over again, resulting in the same argument. There's never a resolution. It's a vicious cycle. And to make this breakdown of communication even more serious, the topic of the perpetual controversy is probably really important and does need to be resolved. So, as I said before, you've got to realize how fast communication can break down and misunderstandings can occur, especially with people closest to you, especially with your kids. Today, we are going to talk about the art of communication. We will be revisiting our opening skit several times throughout this podcast to point out where the argument could have been avoided or tempered. Remember, teaching is all about being an effective communicator. And so your learning new techniques can always be helpful. If you incorporate this knowledge into the learning profiles that you are building for each of your children, it will help you to sidestep some of the pitfalls that can sideline your teaching day when communication channels seem to break down.
So today, first, we're going to start in our discussion of communication to talk about Eric Berne's theory of transactional analysis. And that will help us understand what's going on in our minds as we communicate. So just to explain the idea of transactional analysis, transaction is like when you send a message or receive a message. That's what the transaction is. And then, of course, analysis is analyzing it, seeing if it worked or if it didn't work. So Eric Berne explained that people communicate in 3 ego states. He calls these states the child, the parent, and the adult. Ego states refer to the ways that we think, feel, and behave, changing across time and context. So, depending on the situation and the topic, we may be communicating in our child, parent, or adult state. Everyone has these three ego states, and they can be activated by the situation and context. So just think of that. You are living with three ego states. So, to give you a good example of how this plays out in communication, let's just take, for instance, that you turned into a parking lot and you are headed for a prime parking spot. You have your turn signal on. When another car heads in the lot from the opposite direction and turns in front of you and takes the spot. If you jump out of the car and start yelling at the offender, you are probably communicating from your child ego state. If the offending driver comes out of his car and engages in the argument, he is also communicating from his child state. If an eyewitness steps in and tells the driver that he was very inconsiderate for jumping in front of the driver when he could see that he was ready to turn in, the eyewitness is communicating from his parent ego state. Now, if a police officer shows up, he should be in his adult state and try to get all the participants back into their adult ego state in order to settle the dispute. If two people are communicating in their child state, child to child, they can have a conversation. If people are communicating in their parent to parent ego state or their adult to adult state, they can have a conversation. But if one is in their parent and one is in the adult, that is cross communication, and misunderstandings can occur. So, let me explain how these ego states are developed in your mind. Eric Berne compared the human brain to a tape recorder because he developed transactional analysis a long time ago. Today, I'm sure he would think of it as a hard drive on a computer. Now, he says that from the moment of birth, our hard drive is on, and we are recording everything that happens to us all the way through from birth until death. Now, the child tapes are you're recording because you're nonverbal as a child. You're recording feelings and reactions to what happens when the parent figures in your life are taking care of you and raising you and that sort of thing. So you're recording the thoughts, the behaviors, the feelings you had as a child. And that, of course, is always with you. If you're lucky and you have good parents, you get good stuff. Like you come out with a sense of wonder, optimism, and trust. You see life as a good thing. But if you're not lucky, if you have parents whose parental tapes and child tapes were not very good and they're transferring them on to you, you might come out with temper tantrums, jealousy, distrust. If you have a parent figure that lies to you or lets you down all the time, then you kind of learn to not to trust people. And those are the things that are recorded in that child tape. Your parent tape, on the other hand, is everything that comes at you from a parent figure. During your early years, they record everything that's said or done by anyone who serves as a parent in your life. It can be, of course, parents, grandparents, babysitters, teachers. It can even be the TV and media. If you spend a lot of time in front of that, you're going to record things in your brain because of that too. Everything that's coming in is being recorded. The parent tape should hopefully teach you that you're loved and valued. They should give you moral, ethical information along with common sense, safety, and survival material. But, if you're unlucky and the parents were not very well equipped or came up in dysfunctional homes themselves, you might feel devalued or angry or really lack vital information to survive in the world. But whatever happens, whatever your experience is, lucky or unlucky, that is recorded in your parent tapes.
Well, Nancy, what kind of parent tapes did you receive?
Well, I was really lucky, I think. I had good parents. They were there all the time. They took me to church. They gave me moral values. They held me accountable. I remember one time I must have been really acting up in church because my dad got my hand and we went pretty fast down that aisle out the back door. I remember seeing people whiz by in pews, but I also remember that I never had to do that again. So my folks were not harsh, but they were, consistent and taught me what was right and wrong. So I really feel like I was lucky in that department. How about
And
you?
yeah, I feel the same way. I think my parents were good parents, and I grew up with good moral values, and I the only it's funny, the only thing that sticks in my mind is parent tapes. Well, of course, they did give me parent tapes a lot, and I have to admit that as a kid, I kind of ignored them. I was not always the good girl they thought I was, but then they never found out any different, so it didn't bother them. But when I would go shopping with my mom, she was one that would always say, if I put on something and she didn't like it, she would say, "Well, it makes you look fat. It makes you look fat." And so I honestly believed that I was fat as a child. And my sister has experienced the very same thing. So we compare notes today and we both recognize that that was just something that she carried around. I don't even know why, because she herself was not fat. And, I don't know, but she just would look and say, "Oh, that makes you look fat." And for years and years and years, I hate to shop now. I'm not good at it, but at least now when I go, I don't look in the mirror and immediately say, "Well, you that makes you look fat." So, but it's a negative thing that it's very hard to get rid of.
It really is. I remember as a kid, because I was always kind of tubby, that when I was with adults that my folks were hanging out with, more than once I remember them saying, "Well, she doesn't look like she ever missed a meal," and that certainly gave me, the same message over
Yeah,
and over again, and that really carries with you throughout your adult. And but it sounds like you updated your tastes, that you're
I
not
try.
looking in the
I
mirror all the
try.
time. It's
Yeah, I
hard,
try.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, updating your tapes is really important, because that's what forms your adult ego state, is everything that you figure out for yourself what's true. And if you have these messages that don't fit in anymore with how you believe and how you think and what you see in the real world, then you update them. You don't have to keep those tapes forever. Your parental tapes, keep what's good, but update what's not working for you, and that makes you a functioning adult. Um,
Tell the story. You told me a story about your granddaughter and your
yeah,
son. Tell that story. They'll enjoy that.
sure. And it is a story about updating, but as a grandparent, this happened really recently. My granddaughter Lola is 4 years old, and she has really curly hair, and I have really curly hair. And of course, I've fought it my whole life because I want to look like everybody else, and it just doesn't. It just won't do what I want it to do. And I made a derogatory comment in front of Lola about curly hair, and my son immediately said, "We love curly hair. I think curly hair is the best. People are lucky if they have curly hair." And what he was doing is he was correcting that child tape and parent tape for my granddaughter, because I was really sending a negative message, and she can't do anything about that curly hair. She doesn't have to grow up hating it. She can grow up loving it. But that was a real reality check, that, you have to be really careful, because you still are uh, helping kids with their parental tapes. It's all being recorded, so be really careful what you say to children. And I kind of think, I mean, it's a hard situation, but I kind of think that your children should do some correcting if you're doing something, that's really causing harm, or if you're around people that are cussing a lot or something like that, and you don't want that in your child's tapes. You kind of have an obligation to stop that, and change it around, make people aware, because you don't want kids to grow up with that. That's not the message you want in their head and for life. So it's pretty serious business.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard to change them sometimes, but you need to work at it. What do those ego states have to do with you and your communication in your own home and in your own home school? Well, every time you talk to someone and your students, you might hook into either the parent, the child, or the adult state, depending on what you say and how you say it and how he or she is feeling. And you've got to remember that the only way you can have a productive conversation is if everyone stays in the adult state. If someone is communicating from the child, which hooks your parent, then you're going to have a cross transaction and the communication will break down. So child, child, parent, parent, and adult, adult transactions are the most productive. And, that kind of makes sense. But it's not always easy to recognize. You need to try to anticipate by checking in with the person you're talking to. In other words, kind of analyze what they're saying and try to figure out which ego state they're speaking from. And then you can either stop an argument right there, or if you join them, like if they're speaking from a parent ego state, you could stay in the parent ego state but just deny, like if they're talking Susie just looked terrible today. She had her belly button was showing when she came to music. And that is actually a parent state, which maybe you gave your kid at one time. But you can always say, well, that's just the way people dress today. I'd rather not see you like that, but it's not the end of the world. At least that would try to do something to undo that, which you might have done.
Right. You would go into your adult state and kind of stop that parent.
Right. Yeah.
But if you stayed in the parent state, the other person could say something like, I know, isn't that just distasteful? How could you ever allow your child to do that? And look at her hair. It's all purple. Should you let anybody, you're just blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah
Yeah.
from the parent state. And you could talk with your friend all day long if you stay in that mode.
Yeah. But you've really got to watch it with your kids because you
Right.
don't want to be in that mode with them.
Right.
Yeah. So it's important that you be able to identify the ego states. So Nancy, let me give you an ego state and see if you can identify what it is.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure my child would not have done anything wrong.
That's probably childish to think that your child is perfect.
Yeah. Even though mine are.
Yeah, right. How about this one, Sue? The way most girls dress today is disgraceful.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the parent.
Right.
And the grandparent. And it's hard as a grandparent today. I look around and I think, oh my goodness, we could never do that.
Right.
But I try not to be judgmental if I can help it, because it's the way it is.
Sure.
How about this one? My child is not performing as well as she might. Can you help her?
I'm sure that's adult.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very adult.
Just by accepting that there might be something that's not perfect.
Right.
Asking for help. That's really good.
Right.
What ego states do you think you and I were in when we were quarreling earlier?
Well, I definitely saw a lot of child in what you were doing.
That was me.
And I think that, like, you're not my boss. Yeah, you can hear a kid say that really quickly. Yeah, definitely in the child. Feelings are hurt. Everything just broke down at that point. And I think I tried to stand the adult all the way through.
Yeah, you did. Which only annoyed my child, actually.
That's right. It didn't work at all. It did not work at all. So,
can you think of any child-to-child communications which might occur at your age? I mean, I think the parking lot example is perfect for that.
Right.
Because, if you hop out and start yelling at them and they hop out and start yelling at you, you've got child to child right there.
Right.
And you're not going to get anywhere with it, as far as you'll communicate a lot, but you're not going to ever stop it until somebody else intervenes.
And I was thinking too, when I put that together, is that when you look at these awful videos of where the police kind of lose their adult state, and you see them become their child, feeling all the feelings, or acting on everything that are in their tapes, and just disregarding their position, and then awful things happen when that happens. So when you're watching things, videos and stuff, it's interesting, if you're learning this, to just look at where are they coming from, what's their ego state, how are they communicating, and will it play out successfully? Well, not if it's just a big argument and people are acting childish and whatever.
Right.
So.
It's really, really important that you are aware of the ego state that you're talking to, your recipient's ego state. And then you can build on their experience and observations. But if you can recognize the ego state, that gives you a head start in trying to calm it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're hoping that, understanding that you'll be able to start using that with your family and your children. And I think it will help, in your schooling. When things start to break down, you can take a look at it and not join the breakdown, but try to fix it, All right. So, before we end our conversation about communication, we want to talk about the importance of nonverbal communication and also share a couple of strategies with you that can be very helpful in communicating with others. Family communication transactions become routine. It's like dancing the same dance over and over again. We never check to see if the message was received according to our intention. When we listen, we often listen to react instead of to understand. Learning some new strategies and to change up the dance steps will help you to better engage, motivate, and instruct your children. So let's first talk about nonverbal. Nonverbal communication, you use nonverbal communication 90% of the time in conveying feelings. So anything you're doing with your voice, your eye contact, your body language, that is conveying how you feel. The words are just, 10% of the transaction. For instance, if you take the words, I'm sorry, to be sincere, everything in your nonverbal has to go along with those two words. But, if you put your hand on your hip and you have a snarl on your face and you say, I'm sorry, nothing comes through. I mean, well, a message does come through that, yeah, I'm not going to say I'm sorry to you. I am not sorry at all, you know? So it's really important to be very aware of your nonverbals because, you want your message to work. You want the person to get it. And so check what you're doing, what you're sending. Your kids are very good at interpreting your moods because they know you very well as you know them, and so they react to that more than to the words, I think, often. So be careful what you're sending and how you're sending it. Now, the research shows that kids aren't very good at nonverbals. They don't always interpret them correctly. Like they may say you're yelling at them when you really aren't, but that takes maturity to really be able to translate all those nonverbals the way they are meant to be translated. So just check your nonverbals and make it so that they work for you, not against you.
Yeah, I was trying to imagine the nonverbal communication that occurred during our quarrel in the opening. And I mean, I speaking from being the child, I was giving a lot of that nonverbal because my face, as I said the things, I could feel my face tense up and make the nasty look on it, and just act like a child. So there was a lot of nonverbal communication going on during that, even though nobody could see it. But I could feel it, and it surprised me about how much nonverbal. I don't do any acting or anything, and just trying to take on a little different persona forced me into recognizing how much nonverbal there is because it was really there.
Right. And
Yeah.
in a previous podcast we talked about getting in touch with feelings, how kids can learn about feelings, and one thing we suggested was role play because doing that and doing the physical actions really makes you sort of feel those feelings. So you experience that,
Right.
that
Right.
what that felt like.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about one of the new strategies, or maybe it's not new to you, and if it's not, that's great. It's called an I message, and you can use this when there's a misunderstanding instead of a you message. Now, the you message begins with you. You did this. You did that. You make me feel this way. While the I message follows a pattern. The pattern for the I message is you say, I feel. So you take responsibility on yourself instead of pushing it on the other person. And you say, I feel. And then you have to explain when you, and explain what they're doing because, in other words, explain why it makes you feel that way. And then I want you to, which is saying, this is what I'd like you to do. And so instead of a you message, that can be very, very powerful. It works great in a marriage. When you would normally say something, ornery about you make me feel this way, if you will just stop and think about that and put it in the I form, it will really, really make things a lot better. Let's look at your kids that you're working with. Um, what if you said this you message to your student? You said, "You are so annoying when you do not want to do your schoolwork." And that's not a hard thing to imagine. I mean, that's the way you're thinking. They're just really annoying for not wanting to do their schoolwork. And what's the child going to say after you've said that to them? Yeah, probably nothing, because it's putting everything on them. And then they're just pretty well stuck. They don't say anything. There's not a continuation. There's not any kind of an improvement. But if you put it in an I message, you would say the very same thing in an I message would be like this: I feel so annoyed when you do not want to do your schoolwork because we are wasting time, and I want you to do well on this unit so we can move on. This is not nearly so confrontational and accusing. You are explaining your feelings. A child can respond to that. And your kid might just say, "Gee, Mom, I already understand this stuff. I don't need another worksheet." And you need to listen. And if the child is trying to tell you that he's wasting his time and he feels like it's a waste, you need to address that. You might just say, "Good, I'll give you a quiz here, and if you get the quiz, we'll just move right on." So you want to be able to have them continue to interact with you, and in fact maybe share some of their feelings. And the way to do that is with the I message,
Right.
not the you message.
Well, you preserve their dignity when you do that, and
Mm-hmm.
it keeps the conversation open, and it's really concise and really says how you feel when you stop and think about it. And the you message just shuts it down,
Right.
because you're kind of coming from your child too when you're doing that, just being mean to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sometimes it's hard because you are at that frustrated level. But if you can think about an I message, that will give you a hands up on correcting the situation and moving forward, I think.
Now I'm sitting here thinking about our opening quarrel and what I could have said if I had the presence of mind to get out of my child. I
What
could
do you,
have I could have said, "I feel like you think I'm stupid when you criticize me, and I want you to treat me with respect."
right.
That's saying a lot right there. In
In
fact, making
essence,
everything much more clear than, just who do you think you are,
right. In
that
essence,
kind of
that's
thing.
exactly what you were feeling all the way through
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And so it's opening the door to more discussion.
Right. And I think if I were to sum up my position in an iMessage, I would say, I feel like I can't be honest with you when you get so upset when I make a suggestion. And I want us both to be open to ideas and to improve our podcast. So, an iMessage would help me to establish where I'm coming from too. And if tempers were not high and people were listening, that could really open conversation and fix the
Hmm.
problem and fix the problem. So,
Yep.
so that's one good strategy. And if you remember to use iMessages with everybody, if you are feeling that you need to, please do that. I think you'll find that it's really successful with everybody, all ages, really. So we've talked a lot about talking and in communication, but well, probably one of the biggest parts to communication is listening, being a good listener, not always giving your 2 cents worth, but just being quiet and listening and understanding what the other person is saying. A good, really good technique for this is to know how to do reflective listening. And it really sounds like it's a simple thing, but when you start doing it, it's not so easy, and it takes some practice. But what you do in reflective listening, think of a mirror. You're reflecting what the other person says. So you listen carefully to what they say, and then you paraphrase what they say and feed it back with them with a feeling, with how you think they're feeling. So you just paraphrase it back and supply their feeling as you see it. And then just be quiet. And they're going to say, yeah, that's right. And blah, blah, blah. And then when they finish with that, you paraphrase it back to them and you supply a feeling. You don't give advice, you don't do anything like that. You just keep feeding it to them until they get a chance to say everything that they want to say. And in the process, you're learning a lot too. You don't want to jump in and give advice. You don't want to, tell them not to do something. You don't want to do anything to shut down the conversation. You just want to listen all the way through. And that is reflective listening. Um, an example of this, when my son Paul was about 10, his class was going to a roller skating party at the roller rink. And we were in the car, and he just said, I wonder if I should ask Christy to couple skate. And so, my first reaction was to tease him, and I wanted to say, Paul's got a girlfriend. You want to invite her, blah, blah, blah. But fortunately, I didn't, because I had just learned about this reflective listening stuff. And I came back with him to say, so you want to invite Christy to couple skate, but it's kind of scary. So I repeated what he said and put a feeling to it. And he says, yeah, yeah. What if I ask her and she turns me down? So if you ask her and she turns you down, that could feel pretty bad, couldn't it? Yeah, it could. And so we were able to talk that through for him. And he was able to really process those emotions and decide what he wanted to do. And so that really left me with, wow, this stuff really works. And to stop before you're teasing somebody or, going to shut them down, shut their communication down, you have to be really careful with that, that you don't. In counseling, I found working with teenagers, they would talk to me. Well, of course, they're there to talk, but all I did was listen and do a lot of reflective listening. And they were able to process all the way through. And they said, their parents don't listen to them. And what happens when you're a parent is that you're so vigilant about wanting to take care of your child that you get scared when they start telling you some things that are pretty serious. And all they want to do is talk through it to get advice, but they don't want advice until you totally understand. They may not even want advice, and they may come around to exactly the way you're thinking, or that's okay with you if you just give them a chance to process. But if you jump in all the time, if they're talking about alcohol or something, oh, don't drink. Oh, don't drink and drive. No, you can't be around that person anymore, or whatever, is going on in your heart. You have to, just don't do that. Let them talk all the way through. And then a lot of times you can also say, so what do you want from me? You want ideas, you want strategies. You can do it a lot of different ways depending on the conversation. It works great with adults, because when people come to talk to you, they don't necessarily want you to jump in and stop their communication. They want to process. So give them that opportunity to process. So reflective listening is really, really valuable.
Would it have been useful to us in our fight this morning?
I think so. When you gave your I message and you said that, you were feeling upset because I was so critical, then I could have come back and said something like, so you're saying that I'm overly critical of you and you don't feel respected. Just reflect it back to you.
Right. And then I would be able to say, yes, you are aggressive. With my first attempt at the introduction, you didn't even give me a chance to self-correct. I'm aware of what I did and that it had to be redone.
And then I could have said, so you're saying that I listen to react instead of to understand? And that makes you feel devalued? You see how...
Then we can go on. I say, I don't feel good in this situation, and it makes me not want to do podcasts.
Sure.
Until we can actually work through it and
right
together. So,
but if I would have allowed her to do that through reflection instead of interacting with her and trying to get things back on the way we needed to do for the podcast, we probably could have settled that pretty quickly and not had to leave the room and all of that. And we both would be understanding and improving our partnership because we know how everybody feels, It's really good stuff, but it does take work. When you first try to do this, try to role play it or do it, it takes work to know how to respond and to do that, reflect. A good example, if you're learning this, if you listen to news broadcasters and they're interviewing somebody, they will mirror what they said. What the person said, and often give the feeling before it moves on, or they give another question. They're really good at summing up and reflecting to make sure that they understand what that person said. So that's good if you're learning. Just be really aware of that and watch how they do that.
Yeah, I think these are very valuable. And in our book, we have all the steps of the iMessage set out there for you, and more explanation for you on all of it. But it's really an important thing for you to try to get into yourself so that you begin to use it without even having to think about it, because it will make things so much better. Also, remember, back in the personality podcast, we gave you quite a few tips for communicating with each one of the 4 types of personalities we were talking about. You may not remember, but like the blue connector, there was listed there, don't bark at the blue connector. If you use sharp voice with the blue connector, it really turns them off. And there were other messages also. The gold planner person is not happy if you don't come prepared with good details. They want to see things organized and in detail and know that you know what you're doing. And the green thinkers don't want the small talk, so don't bother. Just get right to the meat of what's going on, but give them ponder time. Let them have time to think. They don't like to act on the spur of the first thought. They want to think. And then with your orange movers, you can talk in sound bites, little short sentences, and be really flexible for them, because that's the way they are. And if they're going to be flexible, then you're going to have to flex with them. But remember, even though those 4 personalities have a lot of different little tips that go with each one of them that you can actually use, they are going to all respond really well to what you've gotten today. So when you try iMessages or reflective listening, or you think about your nonverbals, or you think about what ego state they're in, that is going to be very, very helpful in all ways with your communication with your students, even with your husband, or even with your friends and out. You become aware of it, and you will find that it's very, very interesting.
It is, and don't forget, if you want to go back and check that podcast on personality, the show notes have a lot of information on that, and there is the article there that will give you all the information again on how you communicate with the different personality styles. So check back with that and add that again to the information that we talked about today.
And do you also have the iMessage steps in the show notes?
Yes, all that will be in the show notes.
Good.
Right. And those show notes I'm talking about go with the personality podcast if you want to check back with that. So we really thank you for joining us today, and hope that this discussion on how to improve communication skills really enhances your art of communication and helps you in your family communication and friends, and especially in your teaching, your homeschool teaching. We really enjoyed spending this time with you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to our Homeschool Tacklecast today. We invite you to join us next time as we cast our line into new and innovative strategies to help you keep your children engaged and excited about learning.
We suggest you go to our website, teacherstacklebox.com/homeschool, and explore what we have to offer in the Homeschool Tacklebox Handbook, and also in the teen and elementary workbooks for your children.
Feel free to email us through the contact page on our website. We promise to respond to your questions, comments, and concerns in a timely manner.
Until another day, bait your hook, cast your line, and let's go fishing.